Hey everyone, I'm Nick, and this is the Hyper Clack Tactile Mechanical Keyboard from Hyperkin. Hyperkin is probably best known for their Retron 5. They're a game console that can play cartridges from the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Game Boy, and Game Boy Advance, and includes an HDMI output to connect to modern TVs. This keyboard uses real mechanical switches, and it's designed with the look of a Super Nintendo. Actually, a North American Super Nintendo. Most of the rest of the world wasn't lucky enough to get the purple Super Nintendo that we got. Everyone else got the better looking multicolored Super Nintendo or Super Famicom. I have a special place in my heart for the Super Nintendo though. I remember being in service merchandise when I was 8 years old and seeing Super Mario World on display for the first time. I was the perfect age when the Super Nintendo came out, and it's still my favorite console of all time. I spent so much time with that thing. My older brother had an NES, but when I saw Nintendo added X and Y buttons and left and right shoulder buttons, it blew my 8-year-old mind. So when I found out that Hyperkin was releasing a keyboard sporting the SNES color scheme, I pre-ordered it right away. This isn't an officially licensed Nintendo product. Hyperkin makes no mention of the Super Nintendo. They only state that it features an iconic retro-styled color scheme. But just looking at the package, you can see what they're going for here. With the same look as the game box art, even with the same yellow dots. I paid $99 for this, and with a ton of great mechanical keyboards out there for that price or less, let's take a look to see if it's worth the money. Starting off with the design, everything here is made of plastic. There's no metal top. Instead, it's a very smooth plastic in beige, like most PCs from the 90s. There's a light textured purple on the right and left side. On the top is a purple accent with the white Hyperkin logo printed on it. Flipping the keyboard around, there are channels for you to route the cable in 3 different positions. The USB cable is thick and braided. It measures a few inches short of 6 feet. There are 4 rubber feet on the bottom, as well as legs to angle the keyboard. There are actually 2 different sized legs for different heights, if you want an extremely angled keyboard. This keyboard does have some lighting. There's a strip along the front that glows purple. You can toggle that between solid, pulsing, or turn it off completely. The keys are not backlit though, which I think is a major drawback for this keyboard, and something you would expect out of a keyboard at this price. A wrist rest isn't included either. For me, this isn't an issue because I don't use them when they are included, but if you do use a wrist rest, then you're out of luck here. Moving on to the keys, this keyboard uses Outemu Blue switches instead of Cherry MX switches. These are just basically clones of Cherry switches. Cherry MX switches have a 50 million keystroke lifetime and are really considered the standard for mechanical switches, but Outemu Blues are well received. Outemu switches are also rated at 50 million keystrokes, and have similar characteristics to Cherry MX Blue switches. The Blue switches have a tactile bump and an audible click with each press. They have a very similar feel and they sound pretty close to Cherry MX switches. The best way I can describe the difference is that Outemu have more of a crispness when it comes to the click, which isn't better or worse, it's just different. They do feel really good to type on and feel nearly identical to Cherry MX Blue switches. This is going to be a preference thing on which you prefer, but I have no problem recommending a keyboard with Outemu switches. Here's a sound comparison between this keyboard and the HyperX Alloy FPS, which uses Cherry MX Blue switches. The keycaps have angled corners, but they're compatible with Cherry MX switches, so you could swap these out if you wanted. You can also see the red backplate, which doesn't look bad, but I'm not sure why they went with red. It doesn't match anything else. The characters are printed on the keycaps instead of being laser etched like keys on a backlit keyboard. I'm not a fan of the typeface either, but that's just me. I like a clean, simple font. You don't get dedicated media keys and volume controls either, so you have to use the function key as well. They also have shortcuts to My Computer, Homepage, Calculator, and Media Player, but look at the F2 key. Why would they go with the Internet Explorer logo? What year is it? No one at Hyperkin heard that Microsoft discontinued it? So this keyboard is pretty bare bones when it comes to features. They don't have macro keys, but it does have anti-ghosting and N-key rollover, so you can input multiple keystrokes at the same time and everything will register. You can also disable the Windows key so you don't accidentally interrupt your game. The purples do remind me of an SNES controller, but I don't think they went far enough with it. Like, why isn't the top the same gray as the controller instead of the beige? And what's with the dark beige keycaps? The beige does give it a very 90s look, but are they going for a retro PC look or a retro console look? They clearly went for it with the packaging, but only went halfway with the actual keyboard. I would have liked to see them use similar fonts for the keys as the Super Nintendo, or maybe use the rubber start and select buttons for the volume and media controls. The build quality is really good though, and these switches are great to type on. But I think the price is too high for this keyboard. There's just too much missing here that you get with other mechanical keyboards for the same price. The biggest being the backlit keys. For $100 you should have no problem finding a mechanical keyboard that uses Cherry MX switches and has backlit keys. I wonder how many people this keyboard will actually appeal to. After all, I love mechanical keyboards, and I love the Super Nintendo, but this keyboard's pretty underwhelming. Most people will look at this keyboard and just see a beige keyboard with some purple keys. So that does it. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the like button and drop a comment below. And if you'd like to see more videos from me in the future, please make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.